Yeas are 218 and nays are 210. The bill is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The unfinished business is the question on suspending the rules and passing H.R. 2213, which the clerk will report by title.
H.R. 2213, a bill to designate the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 801 West Eastport Street in Iuka, Mississippi, as the Sergeant Jason W. Vaughn Post Office.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? So many as in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
The House passes the Boehner debt proposal by a vote of 218 to 210. And they are wrapping up work on a couple of other bills, but this is not the end of the line for the House this weekend at all. It is likely that the Boehner proposal, now that it's passed, is going over to the Senate. Harry Reid has said that the Senate will take up that measure, and that could be fairly soon. The Senate is in, and debate continues. You can follow that on C-SPAN 2. What's likely to happen, according to Harry Reid from earlier today, is that the Senate will take up the measure and vote to table or discard that measure. And then if the Senate successfully does that, they will move on to Harry Reid's proposal for the debt ceiling and deficit reduction. So that's still ahead. House and Senate both expected to be in much of the weekend. The House here on C-SPAN and the Senate on C-SPAN 2. We will keep you posted on coverage plans.
member voted? Vote. The yeas are 420, the nays are 0. Two-thirds of being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Without objection, 5-minute voting will continue. The unfinished business is on the question of suspending the rules and passing H.R. 789, which the clerk will report by title.
H.R. 789, a bill to designate the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 20 Main Street in Little Ferry, New Jersey, as the Sergeant Matthew J. Fenton Post Office.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? So many as in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. You ready?
Clear it up. We'll do 1 minute.
Okay. House will be in order. Gentlemen, please clear the well. You ready? You want to take over? Good luck to you.
Thank you, sir.
Is this your first time?
No, I've been on one of
Does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition? House will come to order. Request for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Ohio rise?
To speak for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
The gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, you know, just tonight we passed the debt ceiling vote, and in it had a very critical feature, a feature that requires accountability in our House, a balanced budget amendment. You know, every day millions of Americans sit at their kitchen table trying to figure out how to pay their bills. But before they write that check and determine how much they're going to have to spend out of that checking account, they first balance that checking account to know how much money is in it. But we in the United States Congress don't do that. We don't balance our accounts. We don't know how much money's in there. We just spend money. The American public
We'll suspend. House is not in order. Please take your conversations off the House floor.
The American public expects accountability from us. In order to have that accountability, we need to do what 49 states in America do, and that's pass a balanced budget amendment. The first of a series of steps was accomplished tonight. Now it's the Senate's turn to pass that balanced budget amendment provision, have both chambers pass it, and have the states, a majority of the states ratify it. This is what the American public wants. They want us to balance our checkbook just as they do theirs. I yield back my time.
Thank you. Gentlewoman's time has expired. Any further requests for 1-minute speeches? The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's something missing in this entire debate. Over the course of the last 30 years, in the 1970s, if you'd have seen the real income for the top 1%, it accounted for about 9% of real income. Today, the top 1% accounts for 25% of real income. The top 400 wealthiest people in the United States of America pay a tax rate of 17%, while the fella in Youngstown, Ohio, is paying a much higher tax rate. And the sky is falling. The Republican Party wants to make all these huge decisions about how we need to fix our country. We need the wealthiest in our country to become patriots and step up to bat and help us solve this problem. Everyone here is being asked to sacrifice. The military, the middle class, the parents trying to send their kids with Pell Grants, the schools that get Title I, all being asked to sacrifice. but for the top 1% of the wealthiest people in this country. It is absent from this debate. It is irresponsible for us to continue this process without asking the wealthiest in the United States of America, who have been blessed to live in this country, to help us solve this problem.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Maryland rise? The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, this evening is a moment in history. In very few times does this House vote to advance an amendment to the U.S. Constitution, but we did it today. And the gentlelady from Ohio, she just talked about what Americans talk about at home. It's about balancing your checkbook. It's about not spending more than you take in. We don't have a problem with too few taxes here in Washington. We have a problem with too much spending. Mr. Speaker, we still borrow 41 cents out of every dollar, and we're borrowing a lot of that money from the Chinese. What this bill we pass tonight will do will put us on the track to pass a balanced budget amendment. What Americans are calling for: permanent accountability from Washington. No more spending tricks. No more budget gimmicks. Just do what every American family and business has to do. Just balance our budget. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields. Chair would remind all persons in the gallery that they are here as guests of the House and that any manifestation of approval or disapproval of proceedings is in violation of the rules of the House. For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington rise? The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the House has acted. No time for celebration. It's not over yet. Until it passes both houses, the American economy is not safe. Standard & Poor's and Moody's announced to the University of Washington and to Seattle and to King County that if there is a default on Tuesday, these institutions in my state go on the credit watch list for downgrade because they receive money from the United States government and there's no certainty that the United States government is going to pay its debts. This is a question about whether the United States is going to be viewed in the world as being responsible and paying their debts. It's not about the future. It's about what we've already contracted. And this House, led by the Republicans, has put every state, every county, every city, every university that writes bonds for their financing at risk. It's going to cause people to pay more in the state of Washington and in every other state because of this foolishness. We need a clean lifting of the debt limit.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5, 2011, the gentleman from California, Mr. Garamendi, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. This evening I'm going to be joined by several of my colleagues, and as they come to the microphone, let me just lay down some of the facts. Not more than an hour ago, this chamber voted on Mr. Speaker Boehner's proposal to deal with the debt limit. Very interesting comments that he made prior to the speech, and while I can't quote them precisely, he did say that his whole strategy started way back in January, and when he told the President that he was going to use the debt limit as a way of getting his way. Well, we saw what his way is, and that's what was voted on today without any support at all from the Democrats, and a lot of Republicans saying that it was not the right way to go. So what did he propose? We have two very, very basic paths that are facing the American public today. One of those paths is a path that we voted on, which is a path to basically unravel most of the things that America holds dear. In order to carry out the caps and the $2.5 trillion reductions that are in that legislation, we would have to decimate Medicare. There's no way it could possibly continue to provide the services to our seniors, and similarly Medicaid, of which 70% of that money goes to seniors who are in nursing homes. And so those two critical parts of the foundation of the American society, that is, providing health care to our seniors and the aged, blind, and disabled, are going to get unraveled as a result of the legislation that passed. Similarly, there's no way to meet those spending reductions without going after Social Security. The other path is one that we have suggested on the Democratic side, and we're going to spend some time talking about these two today, and that is a path that maintains these pillars of the society of America that basically express the value of our country, that our country is one that cares deeply about our citizens, whether they are aged, seniors who may need medical care and who need a income, Social Security and Medicare, or whether they are young children that need an education, and those in between that need jobs. That's the path that the Democrats have offered in the budget that we put forth on this floor, that we voted on. That was our recommendation on how to move forward. It failed without any Republican support, but it was a path that basically spoke to the values of this nation, that we have held dear for these many, many years. Now, I'd like to turn now to my colleagues here. I'd like to start with my colleague from Oregon, Peter DeFazio. Peter, I know that you have some remarks that you'd like to share with us this evening.
Thanks, John. Thanks for helping to organize this response to the Republicans. We do have one real and prevailing crisis in America. It's been with us now since 2008, and that's a jobs crisis. There are probably 20 million Americans who are unemployed, underemployed in this country when you get to the real numbers. Now, credible economists say if we could find a way to put those people or most of those people back to work and get unemployment down from 9.6 nationally to, say, 4.5 or 5%, that would solve a quarter of this deficit and debt crisis. That would be $2.5 trillion over 10 years. Now, the Republicans here have proposed $2.7 trillion of cuts over 10 years. So if we could put people back to work, we would have about the same savings. Then, you know, if we got people back to work and healed the economy a bit, all we have to do, and I talked about this earlier this week, is nothing. Let the Bush tax cuts expire. Go back to the bad old days of Bill Clinton. 3.8% unemployment, paying down debt, the rich paying a fair share. Those were the bad old days, according to the Republicans, because those job creators were paying some taxes. Oh, my God, billionaires required to pay taxes at the rate equal to or higher than their secretaries and the janitors. Can you imagine that? Oh, what disaster. So now they're not only cutting programs and ignoring the jobs crisis, they're making the jobs crisis work. Last week, they ended the Federal Aviation Administration construction program for safety and security. They stopped collecting the tax. The Republicans stopped collecting the tax. It's a user-paid-for system on airline tickets. That's $30 million a day. Most airlines have taken it as a windfall, so the Republicans' mantra that if we lower taxes on corporations, they'll pass it through to the consumers. Ha! No, sorry, suckers. They keep the money, and you pay the same. But then the other mantra is, well, if we get rid of taxes, we'll create jobs. That's how you create jobs, by cutting programs and cutting taxes. Interesting. We've cut taxes on the airline industry by $30 million a day, $210 million a week. That's well over, that's a lot of money on a year's basis, over $1 billion. And guess what? We've lost 94,000 jobs. 4,000 jobs of people in the FAA who oversee the safety and security construction programs to make sure taxpayers get a fair value for their dollar, and 90,000 private sector construction jobs across America. And guess what? The American public doesn't know it yet, but this could well lead to either opening the door to a terrorist attack because we don't do some of the security programs, or causing a runway incursion because we don't finish the runway incursion program before the bad weather in the winter, or I don't get my instrument landing system in Coos Bay, North Bend before the winter, and a plane goes awry. We could have people die because of that. But to them, this is all good. We're giving people back their money, or we're giving the corporations the money, and don't worry. So we need to focus on jobs. There's nothing that they've been doing here for the last 6 months, 8 months, 7 months, however long they've been in power, it seems like 10 years, that has created a single job. In fact, they've cost us jobs. They're costing us jobs at an ever-accelerating rate. And now they want to cut just one more point. They want to cut all investment in transportation by 35%. That's an immediate loss of 600,000 private sector jobs. It means we won't deal with the 150,000 bridges on the national highway system that need rebuilding. We won't deal with the half of the pavement on the national highway system that needs redoing. We won't deal with the $70 billion backlog for new equipment for our transit systems that are so decrepit in places like the nation's capital that people are being killed. We won't deal with any of that. We won't put millions of people to work building new transit vehicles or new buses or bridges and steel and all those things with Buy America. The Republicans say, well, we'll just give the corporations the money and the rich people the money, and they'll trickle down on the rest of us. Well, we've been pretty well trickled down upon for way too long. It's time for new priorities, and I would reject the Republican agenda. Thank you.
Mr. DeFazio, thank you very much. You clearly pointed out the dichotomy between the Democratic's proposal, which is one of building and creating and putting together a society and an economy that actually works, and the Republicans seem to be just dismantling time after time. I'd like now to turn to Congresswoman Betty Sutton, our colleague from the state of Ohio, who has seen the effect of the cuts and what they mean in her district. So, Ms. Sutton, if you would care to share with us your thoughts.
I thank the gentleman for his leadership. He's been a stalwart, and boy, do we need leadership at this point. Here we are. It's been 29 weeks, more than 200 days since the Republicans took over the majority of the House, and not only have they not done anything to create jobs or help working families, here we are today looking at what they have done. What have they done after walking away from the table 5 times in negotiations to restore our nation's fiscal health? The House Republicans have passed a bill today to kick the can down the road so we can continue to have this debate over again in a matter of months. But make no mistake, this is a political dodge. Republicans could not agree on a long-term solution within their own ranks, so they just decided to take a vote on a bill that kicks the can down the road that they know there is not support for, and it's a part of this pattern. What have they been doing in this over 200 days? They have an agenda that aims to end Medicare, that guts Medicaid, that has threatened Social Security, and while at the same time, they've even targeted energy-efficient light bulbs. They've used time in this body to do all of these things while at the same time fighting to preserve tax breaks for the wealthy, for big oil, and for companies that ship jobs overseas. When at this time we know that we have a jobs deficit in this country, there is nothing more important that we can do than to, of course, make sure that America pays their bills, but the most important priority facing our nation is to get America back to work, because we can't solve that long-term deficit problem without people having jobs. And frankly, the American dream doesn't live if we don't have opportunities for families out there to go to work and take care of those that they love, to send their kids to college. That's another thing that the Republicans' agenda has targeted, to put college out of reach again of so many middle-class families. Well, I'm glad to be here with the gentleman from California and my other colleagues to make sure that we explain to the American people that there are people who get it, people who know that the #1 priority is to put people back to work, to focus on building our infrastructure, to strengthening U.S. manufacturing, because we know that we have to be a country that makes things made out of American iron and steel and manufactured goods, that every time you have a manufacturing job, that there is a ripple effect of 4 more jobs. Or if it's in the auto industry, it's 10 more jobs. We know that if we are not a country that manufactures things, then we are at the mercy of those who do. It is incumbent upon us to stand up to make sure that we focus the agenda. We've got to stop this political theater, deal with getting the debt ceiling issue dealt with for the long term, not for 6 months. Not for 6 months and be right back at this again, leaving the American people to wonder, seniors to wonder whether they're going to get what they need in their Social Security checks, veterans to wonder whether they're going to get what they need. We really, really know that the priority has to be on jobs, and we implore our Republican colleagues to join us. 200 days is too long. 200 days is more than the American people and the American families that I am so honored to serve can take. We must focus on getting people back to work.
It is about jobs. There are very few economists, except maybe some that supported the proposal that Republicans put together today, but nearly every economist in this nation said the only way we'll ever get this nation back to a balanced budget is with full employment, putting people back to work, and that is the Make It in America agenda. Let me now turn to Mr. Perlmutter from the great state of Colorado. Has some concepts and ideas he'd like to share with us this evening.
And I thank my friend from California and Ms. Sutton from Ohio. And as they've said, the best way to pay the debt that this nation has incurred is for people to work. All of a sudden you got revenue coming in, and you don't have to pay unemployment. You don't have to pay a lot of Medicaid. You don't have to pay COBRA and all these other things. You have revenue coming in and less expense going out. And so, you know, one of the things about this nation is that it's always provided to those people who really are prepared to work, who are prepared to play by the rules, who take responsibility for their lives and the lives of their family members, a chance to get ahead. That's what America has meant to millions and millions and millions of people throughout our history. And one of the reasons this country was able to provide that kind of a setting for all of us is because 235 years ago or so, this nation went through a war, and after that war, the states banded together and said, you know what? We as a country will pay the debts of our Revolutionary War. And this young nation paid its debts and became a strong nation overnight because it paid its bills. And so for 235 years now, we've been paying our bills. You bet. And that's why we've had the strongest credit, the full faith and credit of the United States of America for 2 centuries. My friends on the Republican side of the aisle, for the last 3 months or more, have been putting that credit at risk. And I'd like to say there was a real reason for them to do that, but there's no reason. When you've incurred a bill, you pay that bill. You don't say, you know what, we're not going to pay the bill unless some things happen in the future. You pay the bill and you deal with the future separately. But not in this Congress, not with this Republican leadership. They tie it all together and said, if we don't get our way, we're not going to pay our bills. Well, baloney. That isn't how it works. And so what we've got to do is come together. The President has proposed a balanced approach to getting this country's fiscal house in order. Now, let's not forget how we got here. 10 years ago, we had a surplus. A surplus. Revenues exceeded expenses. So in these last 10 years, we had 2 big tax cuts. That's a couple $1 trillion under George Bush. We have a couple big wars, which instead of everybody being patriotic and really assist the country. We borrow and do it on a credit card. That's a couple $1 trillion. And then we have a crash on Wall Street, another $2 or $3 trillion. That's where the debt came from. Now, I could lay the blame at the feet of the Republican leadership and administration, but we are where we are, and we've got to deal with it. And it's got to be done in a balanced way, both the revenue side of the ledger and the expense side of the ledger. If our goal is to pay down the debt, you need more revenue and you need less expense. And it's both sides. And you can't just say, we're going to cut. We're going to take it out of Medicare. We're going to privatize Social Security. We're going to, eliminate early childhood education. You got to deal with the expenses, and we know that. But you've got to have revenue. And in this instance, the Republicans say, you know what? We're not going to have additional taxes for millionaires and billionaires and some corporations with loopholes. No, that's off limits. But we are going to go after Medicare. We are going to go after Social Security. We are going to go after early childhood education. That's just not right. And this country knows it. Every American knows that. So we got to get busy, ladies and gentlemen, because we have work to do. If we're going to restore that American dream, we got a lot of work to do. And that's what Democrats are going to do from this point on, from this second on, every single day. We got a lot of work to do, and it's time to get busy. With that, I yield back to my friend from California.
Thank you, Mr. Pruitt.